Welcome back to the Saturday Scholars College Football Podcast. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. That is in. I'm Shub, and today we are here to talk about some college football, some EA Sports College Football 25 news just released. We got a little bit to talk about that. Some new head coaches in the Power 5, or the Power 4, I should say. Power 2. Well, Power 2 plus 1, maybe. I don't know what you want to define how it is right now,
It's
the
like a 2-2
terminology.
split.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
It's Power 2 plus A and B, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Power 2 plus 2.
yeah, the coaching carousel hasn't died down. Like, this thing's still trickling. There's still a little trickle effect that just keeps dripping down. And we have two new head coaches to grade. And we're going to cover some transfer portal content, a lot of transfer portal content today, because it's one thing that we haven't really gotten to because there's been so much coaching carousel turnover and just been a lot of stuff going on. So it's finally time to get to the transfer portal because there's a lot of good stuff, man. With the way that this is the Wild West these days in college football, it makes the transfer portal pretty entertaining. So for those of you who like portal content, today is your podcast. So first and foremost, though, let's talk about the new EA Sports College Football 25 trailer release. We are recording on Saturday, so this thing came out the other day on Thursday, and of course brought a lot of hype. A lot of people are excited. They said that there's going to be more details to be announced about the game in May, but the actual game still won't be released until an unspecified date later this summer, which traditionally the old game used to be, I think it was like July, whenever it come out. So I would imagine probably July or August, just speculation when it actually comes out, but we'll see. But hey, we got an official trailer, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like our first tangible evidence of, hey, man, this thing's actually happening. Let's go. So, what are your thoughts on this game?
So I'm excited to finally bring college football back, and I'm hoping they bring college basketball back too, because both those games are awesome. Do some March Madness. The only thing I have is the only concerns I have is that it's EA, and EA announced, "Hey, we're gonna have Ultimate Team in this game." And I thought immediately to myself, great, the gameplay is going to be terrible. They're only going to care about Ultimate Team and making all the microtransaction money. And they even talked about adding, legends in there like Reggie Bush and all that in here. So great, people are just going to be purchasing the Reggie Bush card and like just playing Ultimate Team, not caring about what makes NCAA so great, and that's the dynasty. Um, Playing a dynasty, building a program up to prominence. That's the fun of college football, recruiting, all these things. That's what makes it so special. You don't get it anywhere else. So another thing about the college game, Shub, is college games always felt different than the Madden games in their play style and just in general, even though they're both made by EA. Now, what I'm concerned with is that it's just going to be copy and paste Madden. Really hope not. Really hope not. I hope there's at least some different mechanics in it. I heard it's on the same gaming engine, which usually means it's going to be like the same. But man, I hope they at least bring like a unique feel to the gameplay. And the biggest thing I want, man, other than like bust and gems and all that to be a little bit revamped, is players don't automatically get better every season. There's a different talent threshold. Like they can get better, they can get significantly better, worse, whatever the case may be. I want all that, man. And then trying to fight off Ohio State from paying my running back $1 million to transfer. I mean, I'm all for it. Let's go.
You saw that meme when that feeling when your star wide receiver goes to Ohio State for $1 million and gets a Hellcat.
Yeah. They
Hey,
said NCAA is going to be crazy.
that'd be pretty good realism, though. That'd be pretty good realism.
It's
So
basically what's going on. And then you have like the players like the Denver Harrises who just bum out and and end up playing D2 somewhere. I don't even remember where he ended up, like UTSA or something. Yeah,
there
it's
probably
crazy.
will be those, yeah. So I have I have a few takes on this, I guess. And a lot of people, I'm sure, probably are interested in hearing our takes on this, especially since I, run a dynasty on this channel with the OG NCAA 14 game. And I guess I have a few angles on this. One, just as a pure fan, just as a pure college football fan, I am excited. 100%, I am excited about this game because it is just an official game with all the modern implementations of the sport that's going to be in it. That's what I am really excited about. as a content creator on this channel with an existing NCAA 14 dynasty, I'm a little wishy-washy about it, to be honest. I will say this. I do care about the game a lot for sure. And NCAA 14 was a great game. It was a great game for so many reasons. And that's why I chose to do a dynasty on it because it's one of those games that will test time. Like I'm still here playing it, over a decade later now almost. And they've made a ton of modifications to it through, college football revamped. Like those guys like created a little syndicate to basically revamp the game, modernize the uniforms, update the rosters, etc. And they did all that for free. There's so much passion that went into that whole effort from college football revamped to modernize NCAA 14 that I decided it motivated me to start a dynasty on this channel and kept that going. And it made me realize how much I just love that game, man. I freaking love that game. That game will always have a place in my heart. But for the same reason that you said, it's EA Sports, man. I have a very healthy skepticism about the new game. And you know what? Even if EA Sports does do a good job, like let's say they do a good job of this game, and there is the passion that goes into that game, like there was with college football revamped, which we don't know who are the people making this game. We don't know if like they share the same passion about college football. Like a great game is always one that has people who are building it that are actually passionate about the game and what the game is trying to replicate and give you that experience. And so far, I will say like they've done it. I've heard that they're definitely placing emphasis on like the college atmospheres, the fight songs, etc., the traditional stuff. Like that's good. That's what, like you said, that's what makes college football great and separates it from the pros. But if they just sort of copy and paste the Madden engine in there and, they set up Ultimate Team stuff with microtransactions, it's EA Sports after all. Like there's a very strong likelihood that's all going to be in the game.
They already said
And
that's going to be in the game.
they did say it was going to be in the game. So we do
Yeah.
know that. And on top of that, this is the first version of the game. This is the first iteration that's coming out here like this year. There is no chance that EA Sports said, "Yeah, we're going to try to perfect this game on the very first version of it after 10 years of there not being a game." There's no shot. This game is going to be imperfect for sure. There are going to be defects, and it is not going to be one that they put all of their emphasis to get it to top-notch like replication of college football at its best in this version of the game. And they know that because one, I mean, you just can't do that when it's the first game and they release games year after year after. Like it's a business model. Like you have to have something else in the next version of the game for them to, improve on and say, "Oh, well, this year we're going to be adding this and we're going to be adding this," and gets people hooked in to
Then
keep
again,
buying the game.
you got to think about this too, Shub, because this is what happened with Madden, and this is why Madden has been the same terrible game for the last 10 years. I mean, it hasn't changed much. Madden, because EA has no competitors in the market, they have a whole cornerstone on the NFL or monopoly on the NFL. And now they're going to have that same thing with college football. What's their incentive to even make the game better from year to year when they know all they do is really just update the rosters and then like maybe add a couple animations and you'll still buy it because there's nothing else.
Exactly.
And
That's my
that's what
point.
happened
There's
with
no
Madden.
incentive to change it. Yeah.
Exactly.
There's
Yeah.
no
But what I'm
incentive to
hoping,
make the game perfect up front. And on top of that, they might not even bother to do that. And they have all the leverage in the world. They know no matter what kind of product they put out, there's going to be people like you and me that are going to buy that game no matter what.
and then begrudgingly play it even if it sucks. That's what Madden is. Like people are like, well, I hate this game, but hey, it's Madden and I don't have any other options. It's not like NBA 2K and NBA Live. I don't have two options here. I've got to pick one or the other. Also, this game that comes out, it's going to be what it is for the next 10 years at least, because we've seen what it's like with Madden. So whatever this NCAA game is, don't expect much of a change for 10 years.
Yeah. And I know we're being negative Nancy's right now, but I think we're old enough and we're mature enough to see different versions of games that EA has put out, not just sports games, like Star Wars Battlefront. I'm a huge Star Wars fan personally.
Then
Battlefront
they went
2.
heavy with microtransaction and Battlefront too.
Listen, all we're saying is I've learned from 27 years of these games that get really hyped up because there's been a handful of them in our lifetimes that like we've got like they get a lot of hype and they usually don't deliver more often than not. And I'm like I really am just have a healthy skepticism about this game. But don't get me wrong, I'm gonna play it. Like no matter what happens, I'm gonna play it. And in fact, let's look on the bright side here. we are going to always have this game. And if, let's say, it doesn't work out, we always have NCAA 14 to fall back on. At least I have college football revamped and all the mods installed on my PS3. I can always fall back on that, which makes me really happy. But the bright side of this is you and me have been talking about this a lot. When that game comes out, I mean, listen, the NCAA 14 dynasty with Illinois, I really don't know what I'm going to end up doing with that. I want to finish out season five. I've sort of been like floating that out there the last few weeks on the channel. I plan on starting it back up and finishing season five minimally. But once this new game comes out, it might be time to start, a an online dynasty between you and myself here and make it a series on the channel. And that's what we've been talking about. So let us know if you're listening to the podcast or you're watching this video. Let us know in the comments what are your thoughts about that, because as of right now, that would be our plan to out of the gate to sort of get on top of this game and start playing and put out content for you guys that are interested in seeing.
And we
That's
have a
our
few
plan.
teams. Each of us have a few teams that we're interested in playing with. So we could put a poll up if y'all are interested, and you guys can vote and pick which teams we go with.
Yeah. We'll see. What do you think? A G5 or P5 or
I'm
P4?
thinking, I think like I want to run it through kind of the lens that you painted. Here is the coach, you know, and you can make it whatever. It's his alma mater, just like your Illinois one, and he's trying to like bring up his alma mater. Or you can be like, this is a coach from a ragtag, whatever. Give him a nice little backstory, and maybe his aspiration is to like, jump up to wherever, and the aspiration for one coach is to get to is like his alma mater, basically. We can come up with our own little backstory. I mean, you did a
Yeah.
great job with the Illinois, and I think having varying backstories is really good for getting people in nice and engaged, because there's a lot of good content that we have coming out for you guys, and we'll have some storylines going on too. Um, yeah, I mean, we got a good plan for it.
So I guess if you describe your thoughts on this new game in one word to wrap it up here, what's one word you want to say to describe like your thoughts and feelings about this new game?
Excited,
I'll give you two words. How about that?
cautiously optimistic.
Good answer. Good answer. I am, I'll say healthy skepticism. So we basically just said the
Basically,
same
same
thing.
ballpark. Yeah.
Yin and yang. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it, but you know what? Let's ride out NCAA 14. We're gonna get the Illinois dynasty back up, and we're gonna run out NCAA 14 before it gets replaced by its new younger
One more
brother here
season.
in a little bit. One more season,
The final season.
final
Can the
season.
Illinois Fighting Illini win the Natty?
Got a good point, man. We're at 5-0 right now. We're through week five, 5-0 in season five. So,
Oh well, thanks for the spoiler alert, Shub.
well, you already know. You've been watching, man. I those videos I put those out last fall or last
Well, what
summer.
about some people who are new to the channel? Spoiler alert, man.
Eh, they can go back and the videos are
You know
still
what? If they made
entertaining
it to
either
this
way.
point, if they made it to this point in the video, they deserve it anyway. They deserve to, have the extra info.
We won't put this part in the video. We'll leave it for the long pod, but we won't put this in the video. Anyways, let's talk about some real college football, because the coaching carousel, listen, we wanted to just have a podcast where we would just talk like straight up, just all transfer portal talk, just all day, all transfer portal. But you know what? The coaching carousel has kept us on our toes. It's still
Yes.
going.
Just when you think it's over, something else happens. It's crazy.
Well, this is the domino effect that this string of hires that we're about to talk about. This is how it all started. Bill O'Brien. He was recently hired to be the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Very interesting hire there. And then you know what happened? Jeff Hafley left for the NFL. He went to be the OC at the Green Bay Packers, or the DC at the Green Bay Packers. I sorry if I forget off the top of my head. And then all of a sudden, Boston College opened up, and who they go after? They got Bill O'Brien. So Bill O'Brien was the offensive coordinator at Ohio State for like what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and he's like, "I'm out. I'm gonna be the head
Basically,
coach at BC, baby." So
he's chasing the money, man.
hey, I mean, this guy's been around the block. This guy is a definition of been around the block. What's your grade on this hire? Now, when we grade this, we want to think about it in from the perspective of the program, the university making the hire, and then the candidate himself. So, what circumstances was the school in when they made this hire? And what do you think about the acumen of the coach himself when you factor in to this grade?
I mean, circumstances. Boston College is moving on. They're trying to get a new coach who can, at least bring some excitement to the program, get people excited enough to donate, increase NIL, increase the stature of the program. I mean, with all the conference realignment that's happening now, here in the next 7 years when the Big 12 contract runs out, there's going to be another flood of realignment. So maybe even sooner if FSU is able to get out the ACC. But regardless, this is a good hire to me in the sense that it is a very well-known name who also is well known for being in NFL circles too. A lot of kids who watch the NFL know the name Bill O'Brien. I mean, and then he's the one who notoriously made one of the worst trades in NFL history. Um, and then he also has a lot of, you know, Power Five coaching experience, so he can say like, "Look, they wanted me to be the OC at Ohio State, at freaking Ohio State, with all those elite receivers and all the elite talent that they have over there. They wanted me to be the OC." So that just speaks about my pedigree. So I think in terms of it being Boston College, I think it's a fantastic hire because who else would have Boston College hired had they not got um, Bill O'Brien? Um, Now I do remember, I do recall that they mentioned it was between O'Brien and another candidate, but I can't place who it was. But I think they got the hire right. I'm going to go ahead and say for it being Boston College, I'll give this a solid A minus. I really don't
Wow,
think they
A
could have done
minus.
much better. Yeah, I don't think they could have done much better. I think it's a good hire, and I think it's a notoriety hire to people be like, okay, it's Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien. I think that's a recruiting driver.
I pretty much agree with everything you just said. It is Boston College and Bill O'Brien. Listen, we've given the man some flack in recent past because he wasn't a great GM. I'll just say that. The good news for Boston College is that he is not making trades because when he was the GM slash head coach of the Texans, he made some really
Andre
bad trades.
Hopkins,
And I'm a Dolphins fan. I'm a Dolphins fan, so I can say Bill O'Brien was one of my favorite
Tunsil.
GMs because yep, he gave us 2 first-round picks and change for Laramie Tunsil
He
and
traded
Kenny
away.
Stills.
I mean, there's the freaking Tunsil trade, and then there's the DeAndre Hopkins trade. I mean, this man
Oh,
was just trying to tank his entire team. I
they
mean,
dumped Hopkins for like it was only a second-round pick. It wasn't even a
yeah,
first for
and it's when
DeAndre
it's
Hopkins.
before he was washed. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
God. So I feel like that's maybe put a little stain on his coaching record. But listen, you have to separate his GM skills with his coaching skills because as a coach, he's actually a good coach.
I mean,
Like the
there's a reason all
Texans,
these people want him.
yeah, the Texans were fairly solid while he was there. And when he was the head coach at Penn State over a decade ago, I mean, not great, but not bad at all. So he had a stint as a head coach in Happy Valley. And then as an offensive coordinator at Alabama, I mean, I would say he did fairly solid as the OC at Alabama, even though Alabama fans thought he was terrible. But I mean,
Alabama fans think everyone's terrible when they don't win the championship. So
exactly. So it's really not that big of a deal. But I'd say for Boston College, as you said, it's a good hire. And I'm gonna give this one a B plus. Now, I'm not gonna give it an A or an A minus only because I do think there is a ceiling here, but because it's Boston College and Bill O'Brien, I would say he's a good coach. I wouldn't say he's an outstanding coach by any means. I think this is very solid. I think it's guaranteed that Boston College will have a set floor as a program, assuming Bill O'Brien stays there. So I think he's going to raise the bar a little bit. Can they get back to those late 2000s teams when they had Matt Ryan and they, back when those days when they were pretty solid? I don't know if they'll be able to recapture that, especially in today's age with the transfer portal and NIL and all that. It's going to be tough, but I would say the ceiling here, if you're Boston College, if you're a BC fan, I'd say, you could probably expect Bill O'Brien to get BC to be a consistent middle of the pack to maybe a
bowl
top half
team.
team in the
Yeah.
ACC because there's a lot of room for growth. And, outside of those top like 4 or 5 programs in the ACC, there's a lot of growth and a lot of room for those schools to, take a little tier jump. And I
I
think
think
Bill
he
O'Brien could
can.
do that.
I think he can elevate them to like a solid 7, 8 win team consistently around there, which is more than Boston College is accustomed to. So
If you're at Boston College, like that's doing a tremendous job, and I think that's still pretty realistic. I think of an expectation if you're a BC fan in today's era. So I think that's the ceiling. Will he get them there? I don't know. I mean, I'd say it's possible, but it's not a guarantee. I think this is just solid, so I say B plus. You say A minus. I mean, pretty
I
close.
mean, if
It's a good
FSU
hire.
is able to get out of the ACC, that's one more domino that's getting out of your way for you to move on up.
That is true. That is true. It's a good hire. So B plus and an A minus from the Saturday Scholars. So, there was another domino that happened to fall after Bill O'Brien went to Boston College. All of a sudden, Ryan Day was like, "What the hell, man? I just hired you as my OC, and then you left like 2 weeks later. Now I got to go get another OC." So he's like, "All right, I'm just gonna go get Chip Kelly," and he got Chip Kelly, who was, let's be real here, he was kind of trying to leave UCLA. Like he was kind of
Hmm.
like, "Hey, if
He was
I
definitely tired of it. Yeah.
yeah, I kind of done with this crap." So he went and got Chip Kelly to be his OC, which honestly, I mean, I feel like it's kind of an upgrade over Bill O'Brien. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, for sure.
that's like low key an upgrade.
That's a great hire by
It
Ohio
really
State.
is. It really
It really,
is.
yeah, it really is. I mean, Chip Kelly. I mean, everyone forgets what he was before he became, the Eagles coach. Before he became what he is today, he used to be an offensive guru when he was at Oregon. I mean, Chip Kelly was considered one of the most creative play callers in his day back then. And he still hasn't really lost that luster. His career has been tainted a little bit by not being in the limelight as much as he used to be back in those days, but he actually has had a good amount of success in his career. He is a good coach.
100%. This is a great hire for Ohio State, and it's a win-win for both sides. Chip Kelly doesn't have to deal with recruiting and boosters and all that anymore, which he hates doing. That's part of the reason. That's one of his pitfalls at UCLA. But the guy can run an offense and the guy can call plays. That is for sure. He can put points on the board and he doesn't have to worry about all that other stuff. So he just gets to sit back and call plays and have a huge talent advantage over like 90% of the teams that he's going to face. So I feel like it's going to work out pretty well for Ohio State.
Oh,
So
absolutely. I think that means an A plus hire. What other better OC are you going to get at this point? Unless you're going to get someone to come down from the NFL ranks, that's not going to happen. Come on now.
yeah, exactly. I mean, considering that it's like mid-February and they just lost their OC, I mean, I'd say you did pretty well because normally a regular school, if they lost their OC in mid-February, they'd be screwed. They wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to get a good candidate. So, all things considered, pretty good for Ohio State. So, because of that domino that fell, UCLA, they had a head coaching vacancy once Chip left for Columbus. And there was a lot of candidates in the mix for this job. This one I was very interested to see who they went and hired because there's a lot of different directions that UCLA could have gone here. And there's so many candidates that I saw that had their names floated out there. PJ Fleck, one of them I thought was the most interesting. Like, would he leave Minnesota for UCLA? How much would have an upgrade would that have been? I don't know. That's debatable. But
And
anyways,
is that, yeah, and is that much of I know it might be a slight upgrade in terms of like monetization and resources, but at the same time, is it worth like leaving your alma mater for? Is it that much of an upgrade when you already have like a really good contract with your alma mater? You're both gonna be in the Big Ten, making the same money. I would say no. I mean, UCLA has not had in their last 20, 30 years, they've only had maybe a handful of good seasons. They're really not a powerhouse. They actually get a lot of, I think UCLA gets a little more credit in football than they've actually earned out on the field. I think that just comes with them being UCLA. It's brand recognition, but yeah, man. I don't know that would be an upgrade for a whole side tangent. I don't know if that would be a good spot for Tech or Fleck.
yeah, and I'm pretty much in agreement with you. And Fleck ended up didn't going. So I feel like maybe his agent was just there to just get his name out there and then just say, "Hey, that's right. My my client is valued at other schools, Minnesota, cough cough." But anyways, who did UCLA end up getting? They went and hired a guy internally, Deshaun Foster is the new head coach of the Bruins. He was the former running backs coach for UCLA. And this guy is UCLA through and through. That's of course his alma mater. He played at UCLA as a running back from 1998 through 2001. He had a solid career in the NFL with the Carolina Panthers and then finished with the Niners. And once he left the NFL, a few years later, about a decade ago, he started getting into coaching. He was a grad assistant at UCLA for a couple of years back in 2014, then had a brief stint at Texas Tech as the running backs coach under Cliff Kingsbury. Had Mahomes on his team as his quarterback, even though he was the running backs coach. But hey, I mean that's a pretty good quarterback to have there for your RBs in front of you. And then he went back to UCLA, and then since then he's been the running backs coach at UCLA for the past 7 years. So when this hire was made, I think a lot of people were like, it doesn't really seem that all that inspiring. You promoted a guy internally, doesn't have any coordinator experience, doesn't have any head coach experience. This is very much a huge risk, I'd say, by UCLA because of the lack of head coaching experience. But he's a guy that definitely fills the voids that Chip Kelly left at UCLA. He's a guy that values recruiting. He's a good players coach. A lot of the players respect him. Apparently, the players were like ecstatic when they made this hire. So he's a good leader. He's a good connector in the locker room. So he's a good players coach. Question is, can he get the NIL that UCLA needs? Because rumors are that UCLA is definitely struggling in the NIL department right now. And one of the other hurdles that they have is the fan buy-in. I mean, it's UCLA. There's a lot of other things that people can do out in Los Angeles right now, and UCLA football isn't one of their top priorities, unfortunately. That's how it shouldn't be. But he's got to get butts in the seats, and he's got to get fan buy-in. He's got to get booster buy-in. He's got to get NIL dollars flowing. He's got the players buy-in, and can he run a program? So, with all that being said, what are your thoughts on Deshaun Foster to UCLA?
Um, I see the potential for good upside, but I think it's more risky. If I had to do like a risk benefit analysis, I would say the risk of failure is probably greater than the chance of benefit or fruition. And that's more so what you pointed out. He doesn't really have any experience as even a coordinator, and now you're going to have him as a whole head coach of a university. Now, the bright side of this is he is an alum, so he's UCLA through and through the way you mentioned. So you have someone there who's going to fight for your program, who's going to put up with your boosters, who's going to go to your booster's house, drive up there, clean his car for him, do whatever he has to do to get that booster to like donate to UCLA and keep the program growing and going. And I think getting a younger guy who has a little bit of pedigree at 30,000 college yards, he played in the NFL for a little while. I mean, that's something that I think speaks in recruiting. He could be more personable with the kids, say, look, I've been through it. And I think he's only in his 30s. He's a pretty young guy. So Deshaun Foster, potential from the rah-rah, Kyle Whittingham, Mike Gundy, home alum kind of like background, if he's able to accomplish that in building a program. But the red flags are just, he's a head coach without any coordinating experience or anything like that. He doesn't know how to manage a program. I'm sure he's been around it, but he's never been the man in charge. And that to me is concerning. And that's why I think that it's more likely that this move does not work out than this move does work out. So I will say, if it does work out, it's not going to be immediate for a guy like this. There are going to be growing pains along the way. He's got to figure out how to be a head coach, build a program, do all these things. But maybe he can boost the NIL presence in UCLA. Maybe he can bring that swag. Maybe that's what they're looking for. And that's why I see that potential in this. But without me going in circles and babbling, I'm going to give a grade. And my grade for this is a C minus. I'm going to go C minus because I think there is a lot of inherent risk in this hire, but there is a chance that this works out for them in the future. Although I think if it does work out, it won't be in the next 2 or 3 years. It'll be more on like a second contract kind of thing. Progressive improvement.
I'm pretty much in lockstep with you there. My grade is going to be a C, just flat C. And for the exact same reasons that you said, I kind of thought of this hire and I was like, this kind of seems very similar to what Syracuse did with Fran Brown, except this is more of like an internal hire, whereas Fran Brown was an outside hire for Syracuse. But a guy that definitely is better at recruiting, is a player's coach, a guy that the players respect, and a guy that's got good leadership skills, but that hasn't ran a program, hasn't even called plays. Now I thought about this and I was like, well, I went back and looked at Jeff Lebby to Mississippi State as like, again, a comparison. Jeff Lebby, I gave a B plus, but that was because at least he was a coordinator and ran an offense, and he'll be actually running something that is proven to be good, that he has proven to do well at Mississippi State. Whereas Fran Brown, Deshaun Foster, they haven't ran anything. They have not ran anything.
Not even been a coordinator, and that's like a red flag to me.
Yes, exactly. It's a huge risk. It really is. And this is another example of the program sort of making the hire based off of what the previous coach did not do well at. And we see this all the time, all the time. What did Chip Kelly not do well at? He did not do well at recruiting. He didn't care about recruiting, and he didn't really connect with the players, and he didn't give a crap about NIL and all that stuff. Well, he gave a crap about NIL, but he didn't care about any of that stuff or getting fans to buy in. Deshaun Foster, he's an alum. He cares about UCLA. He connects with the players. He's younger. He's 44, by the way. And
Mm.
he's a great recruiter and a good players coach. So he's all the things that Chip Kelly was not. So pretty much polar opposites here. So it's one of those hires. I will say Deshaun Foster, man, whew, he's got a tough he's got a tough road ahead of him at UCLA, man. Have you seen the win total on FanDuel? Right
I
now
haven't seen it. What?
it's only 5.5.
Oof,
And
it's
I
rough.
looked at their schedule. You look at their schedule for next year, they're non-con.
It's
They
probably
got to
rough
go
if they're 5.5 on win total.
they got to open the year at Hawaii, which again, it's Hawaii, you should win, but you still got to go at Hawaii. And then they got to go at LSU, and then they got Fresno State as their non-con.
It's a
It's a
little
little
tough
tough.
there. Yeah,
And then
Fresno's no pushover.
In Big Ten play, they got to go. They got Oregon. They got to go at Penn State, at Nebraska, Iowa, at Washington, and then they host USC.
It's tough.
It is tough. And
It's a tough
then
schedule.
their flip games are like at Rutgers, and then home versus Minnesota, home versus Indiana. I
The
mean,
traveling, man. Oof.
there's not a whole lot of games where I'm looking at that and I'm saying, yeah, those are definitely like surefire wins. It's going to be, it might be a tough year one for Deshaun Foster, but you're going into the new Big Ten. The competition is going to step up. So by default, I mean, you got a lot of things working against you, but yeah, man, I'm very interested to see how this one goes. Contrary to Fran Brown, I gave that one a C minus. I gave this a C instead of a C minus because at least this one is internal and at least, like I was saying, the guy cares about UCLA, and like you said, there is that chance there that he could be a UCLA lifer. So that's why I bumped it up from a C minus to a C. And it's little small margins there, but I have rationale
Makes
for
all the
everything.
difference.
It's a well thought through grade, but yeah, I mean this one's inherently risky, but I'd like to see it. I'd like to see this one play out well, though. I mean, we gotta see the LA schools get fans in the seats, man. You gotta College football is better when UCLA and USC, when they're good and their fans actually are in the stands and they got those places rocking in the Rose Bowl and the Coliseum. It's more nostalgic, man. Brings me back to like 2005 when USC was rolling. When those schools are going, it's I think college football is a little bit more fun, but we'll see.
Then again, I don't know. I don't know. With the since 2005, the world's changed a lot. I don't know that even if those teams are dominant, if they'll be able to pack their stands. I mean, look at USC. Even when they were rated, top 15 in the country during Caleb Williams' tenure, they still couldn't pack the stands. So I think it might just be a LA area thing, man. Might be just be an LA area thing.
All right. Well, we have now given our grades for the coaches. So, man, are you ready to talk about transfer portal? I'm ready to
Let's
talk about it.
do it, man. I mean,
Let's
there's
do it, man.
so many moves in the transfer
We've been
portal.
putting this off for like two pods in a row now, so
Yeah, it's
I'm
just because
ready to
there's
go.
so many. Like, come on now.
It really is. So there is a lot of individual players we can talk about, but figured that we would start with a new fresh batch of quarterbacks that have committed, and a lot of these have moves that have been made probably over a month ago now since we've last started putting out videos. But there's 8 quarterbacks that are definitely 8 of the top quarterbacks in this transfer portal class. So let's start with them. Let's run through them one by one here. Cam Ward. He officially, he flirted with the NFL. He actually declared for the draft at one point, but he never hired an agent. So it turns out that Cam Ward was probably just bluffing, trying to get more money out of somebody or trying to see if maybe somebody would extend an offer thinking he was going to declare for the NFL, but that didn't happen.
Are you sure? Because look where he went to school.
Well, somebody budged. Well, we don't know. Somebody budged, and that school was Miami. Miami budged because let's be honest, they were kind of screwed at quarterback. Miami was kind of screwed at quarterback, and so
He
I
had all
think
the leverage. He said, "Hey, pay me, or I'm going to declare, man." Like,
so safe to say it worked. It worked, and they got Miami to pay up, and that's where Cam Ward is going. He's going to the Canes, and yeah, I mean this is one that's obviously not surprising where he ended up, but it's very interesting, and it continues the Washington State to Miami pipeline, man. Like Francis Malgoa, they got him. Miami got him from Wazoo last year, and now they got Cam Ward. Like they're stealing the Cougars' best players, man. 2 years in a row now. So, what
I
are your
mean,
thoughts on this?
Cam Ward's a fantastic quarterback. It's the best quarterback Miami's had in quite a while, man. So
Really?
we'll
You think
see.
so?
I think in a little while, yeah. Cam Ward's a pretty solid QB. He'd be going in the first 2 rounds if he declared this year, or at least that's where I would have him going. Um, but potato potato, either or. It's a pretty talented QB draft. So he was smart to come back and leverage his position to get more money from obviously Miami, who is one of the biggest money givers out there when it comes to recruits. And so good for Cam Ward. But yeah, I know you think about Van Dyke and you think about these other quarterbacks who come through Miami. I think Cam Ward is the best that they've had in recent memory. And that's because he's a good dual threat quarterback, well experienced, success at multiple locations. He's just legitimately a good player.
He is just a legitimately good player. I mean, there was one point early in the season where he was like in the Heisman conversation. That fell apart pretty quickly, as did Washington State's whole season. But, he's
Mhm.
that type of player. Like if he clicks, like if he pops at Miami, he will be a Heisman contender next year. Especially with all the good QBs that left for the NFL that are leaving for the NFL this year. The Heisman race next year is kind of wide open, and Cam Ward could definitely be a guy that if it clicks, like
He
he's
could be worth
gonna.
the flyer. He really could because the ACC is going to get a little bit weaker. Um, Actually, no. With SMU coming in and some of
That's
The
debatable.
Cali teams not so much, but
It's
the
debatable.
SMU is still a pretty solid school. But I mean, they got Preston, man. They got Preston.
But point is, if you have success at Miami, you'll get hyped up. You will get a lot of hype, and that's definitely could be the case with Cam
That'll
Ward.
make him
But
a first round pick if he has good success at Miami.
honestly, with next year's QB class as of right now, I could see it. I could definitely
And that's
see
why
it.
he's smart for coming back, man. Get a check and boost your stock.
But I look at Cam Ward's his 2022 versus his 2023 at Washington State, and there was definite improvement in completion percentage and passing yards and adjusted yards per attempt and touchdown interception ratio, pass rating, everything. Everything improved from year one to year two at Washington State. And his rushing numbers too. I mean, Cam Ward can definitely run a little bit. His rushing numbers even improved from 2022 to
He's a good
2023.
player, man. He's an NFL quarterback.
So if you're Miami, obviously he's gonna have a little bit more talent around him at Miami. With that offensive line that Miami's got coming back too, I this could this could work, man. I'm not gonna lie, this could work. The only thing that obviously we all know is the elephant in the room is Mario Cristobal just has notoriously seemed to
Mismanaged
always
games.
suppress his quarterback talents and not get the best out of his quarterbacks that he has had.
He's going to have Cam Ward playing punter.
That's what I'd be worried about. And like it's a believe it to see it type of thing. Like I got to really see somebody have success under Cristobal and like maximize their full potential at quarterback before I can be like, okay, the Cristobal curse is over. Because it didn't work out for Justin Herbert, didn't work out for other guys. I mean, look at Tyler Van Dyke. I would not be surprised if Tyler Van Dyke just goes and pops off at Wisconsin, and we were like, oh yeah, that's because he was like being suppressed at Miami. Like I would not be surprised to
We'll
see
see,
that.
man. We'll
So
see.
I'm just saying. But yeah, I gotta say, objectively, I like this a lot. This will be a fun one for Miami. So good get for them. Next up, this one. How about this one was pretty interesting. Malik Murphy. He's going from Texas and he's going to Duke. He's following Manny Diaz to Duke. And he's going to be the new starting quarterback for the Blue Devils, filling in the shoes of Riley Leonard. Now, I'd say it's definitely not surprising at all to see Malik Murphy hit the portal. I mean, I think it was pretty much a done deal that he was going to hit the portal once, Quinn Ewers had the job. And then, you got Arch Manning behind you coming up for the year after.
And then Ewers decides to come back.
And Ewers decided to come back. I mean, this was a done deal that he was going to enter the portal. So that wasn't surprising. I would say his destination was a little surprising. He ends up
I
at
agree.
Duke.
I agree with that completely. And they asked him, they said, why Duke? And why did you enter the portal when you did? Because he entered the portal, I believe, after the Big 12 championship. It was very weird timing. And they were going to the playoffs. They knew they were going to the playoffs. And then he entered the portal. And they said, why did you enter the portal? He said, well, spots are drying up. And I guess he chose Duke because it must have been the one school that said, hey, you come here, I'll start you. Like no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I think that probably was the pitch. Honestly, a lot of these guys, if you're going to leave a school and the money that Texas is paying you to be a second or third string guy, you're gonna want to start. So I think that was part of the pitch here. Um, I think Malik Murphy could have gone to a lot of other schools, a lot of other higher end schools. No disrespect to Duke, but it just I guess they really prioritized him with their collective for football. So
I will say though, I wasn't super impressed with Malik Murphy. He was getting a lot of hype. He was getting a lot of hype in the preseason, and the buzz was, hey, he might be like a legit like no you know what backup quarterback. And he did get to play a little bit. He got to play in a few games this year. He threw mainly against Kansas State, which they won in overtime, and then when they played BYU. So he did get a little bit of action, 2 games that he fully started. And to be honest, against Kansas State and BYU, sort of mixed results here. His numbers really weren't that great, in all honesty. 71 passing attempts, which is a decent sample size, sub 60 completion percentage, 5.7 AY-A, and then only a 3-to-3 touchdown interception ratio. So really not great. And I guess Kansas State's got a great defense, so I can't flack them for that. But BYU is definitely not a team that you should be struggling against. But kind of a mixed bag there in 2 games as a starter. So I feel like maybe his stock compared to what it was at the beginning of the season probably fell a little bit. But with that being said, I mean, give him a full season at Duke, we might see a huge, bounce back for Malik Murphy. We haven't seen him in a full season to really realize his potential. So we'll see. This feels very what's the comparison I'm looking for here? Oh, last year, Hudson Card left Texas to go to Purdue. Hudson
that
Card,
didn't work
backup
out. Yeah.
quarterback, got some starting experience, leaves to go to Purdue. I feel like that's kind of similar to that situation, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because if you're not the starting quarterback throughout the whole year, I mean, you're not getting your reps with the ones, the chemistry's not there. That could play into here, or it could just be that Malik Murphy just isn't the talent that we thought he would be at the quarterback position. We'll find out at Duke.
Amen. All right. Will Howard. Now, this has been a done deal for a while now. Will Howard left Kansas State and hit the portal. He kind of flirted with USC. In fact, for a hot minute there, I think we thought he was going to go to USC and play for Lincoln Riley. That did not pan out. So he ended up going to Ohio State and he's going to play for Ryan Day. And honestly, I'd say pretty good decision by Will Howard. You get to be the starting quarterback, presumably,
It's
for
an
the Ohio State
amazing
Buckeyes
decision.
next year.
It's an
And
amazing decision by Will Howard. Will Howard went from, playing in the Little Apple, Manhattan, to being what, like top five in Heisman odds, preseason Heisman odds. He's up there. So I got to tell you, like, it's quite an upgrade for Will Howard, and it's quite an upgrade from Kyle McCord. Um, no disrespect to Kyle McCord, but I mean, Will Howard, I mean, he is a seasoned vet. He knows how to ball, he's certainly an upgrade, and that makes Ohio State quite deadly, considering that Will Howard has years of experience as a starting quarterback and as a signal caller. I think it's a dream come true for Ohio State. This is, I mean, if they want to beat Michigan, Harbaugh's gone. You finally have a quarterback. Let's see what you can do.
yeah, exactly. And Will Howard, I think, kind of lucked out a little bit because he went to Ohio State before the offensive coordinator Shafu, and now all of a sudden he's sitting there at Ohio State and roles and everything, and now Chip Kelly's his OC. Like this dude won the lottery. This dude really won the lottery. I mean, I think Will Howard is definitely could be a Heisman contender next year if it really clicks. I don't know if he is quite that upside, but I mean, if you play for Ohio State and you have a good season, you're gonna be in the Heisman conversation by
Good
default.
offensive line, great wide receivers. I mean,
Yeah,
I can,
offensive
I can,
line
I can
debatable.
see it. I don't know. I can see it. Well, just because Michigan made them look bad doesn't mean anything. I mean, Michigan made everybody look bad. But
That's fair.
but I mean, we saw it. Michigan, that offensive and defensive line, probably the most dominant like on combination I've ever seen, or in many years. But yeah, man. Beside the fact, Ohio State, man, I thought when Will Howard entered the portal that he was going to be like a Wisconsin or NC State, like kind of upside. Those are like the schools they'd be coveting him. But he scored big. He got Ohio State. I didn't think he was going to be a guy, being picked at by one of the top five programs in the nation.
No, 100%. I did not either. So great move for Will Howard. And honestly, if you're Kansas State, just real quick, I'd still say if you're Kansas State, you're still like happy that you have Avery Johnson too. It's not like you're completely bummed out that you lost Will Howard. So I feel like this
They
is
were
like a
able.
win-win
That's
for
a
everybody.
huge win. They were able to hang on to Avery Johnson. Huge win.
One of
He's
those
going to be
rare
so
instances
good.
where it's a win-win for everybody involved. So
Mhm.
it'll be fun, man. Be fun to see Will Howard at Ohio State next season and to see how he fits in with the Chip Kelly offense. Chip having a dual threat quarterback. All right. Malachi Nelson. Now, this one, you and I feel like have been keened in on this because we'll be real here. When last year's recruiting class, he was part of the 2023 incoming freshman class, enrolled at USC. We all knew, all right, Caleb Williams last year, and then he falls in the next, line of the machine, the on the factory line of Lincoln Riley quarterbacks. All right, Caleb's gone. All right, you're up, Malachi. Go win a Heisman. And uh, that didn't really seem to be the case. And I feel like we kind of got a good indication that that was the case when after the season was over, USC was immediately linked to like a bunch of quarterbacks in the portal. And we said this offline. We were like, okay, why are they looking for a bunch of quarterbacks? Because if Malachi Nelson was for sure like the guy that was going to fill in the shoes of Caleb, they wouldn't have been going super aggressively or after guys like Will Howard and the like. So we knew that there was sort of like a little bit of tea leaves there that maybe that was the case. And then out of nowhere, he hit the portal. And then we saw the teams that he was linked to. And I'm like, you remember that list of teams that he was linked to were like, what is going on here? Like, this is
Mhm.
Malachi Nelson. And he ends up going to Boise State, which, I mean, it's still Boise State, but USC to Boise State, you're going out of the Power Four.
Especially when you were considered one of the top two quarterbacks consensus on every recruiting service in your class, and then
I
a
mean,
year later you're at Boise State. That's unheard of.
there was a lot of people that were saying that I respect their full opinions that were saying that he was probably the number one quarterback, and the only reason he wasn't rated number one was because it's Arch Manning. And that's kind of how I was thinking. I was like, all right, Malachi is probably the best QB in that class only because, Arch's last name is Manning. And clearly that was not the case.
You know, may who knows? Maybe this could be more than a talent issue. He may have all the talent in the world, and that's why he was rated so high. Maybe it's an issue of attitude. Maybe it's an issue of thinking you're better than the team, you're better than this, not being a team player, thinking that you should start immediately, thinking this, thinking that, thinking so highly of yourself to the point that the coaches lose trust in you. And that attitude about you exudes when other coaches inquire about you in the portal. They say, this is how he is. He's selfish. He's a talented guy. He's just selfish. If you want to take a chance on him, then possibly. Now, I'm not saying the kid is those things, but I think those are things that we can consider because for all we know, we haven't even seen the guy play. The kid could be quite talented. I mean, he was rated highly for a reason. And so I'm curious to see what he can do at Boise State. I feel like if he does have a good season there, he might try to ride it back and try to get back into like playing for Michigan or someone up there. So we'll see, man. I'm interested to see how his career transpires from here. If he can right the ship, if that's an issue, gain some maturity at Boise State, or just improve his game, whatever the issue is. One of those two things is always what it is in college athletics. If it's both, then maybe that explains his slide from grace. I don't know, but we'll see. Shu, I'm really interested to learn more about Malachi Nelson as we get to see him start for the Broncos this year.
Completely agreed. It was just more so, I think just the news itself of where he went just really caught us off guard. And I think caught a lot of people on social media off guard. Like even I thought, at least if he's going to downgrade, at least you think he's still going to downgrade within the Power Four. Maybe go to a Big 12 school or like a lower tier Big 10 school or something like that. But going down to the G5 is definitely a little bit of lost wind in the sails there for his stock, but we'll see. And you made a great point um about Malachi. He's not like he's tied down to Boise State forever. Like we keep forgetting that it's 2024. Like these guys can just go dip, and if he is a successful season at Boise State, he may be back out and going to UCLA or somewhere like that for all we know next year in 2025. I keep forgetting that's like the world we live in now. But yeah, it is very interesting. And I was thinking about this and I was like, well, he's going to Boise State, but I kind of feel like Boise State's got they got um Madsen Maddox, and I've he did pretty well in this short sample size there at Boise. And I'm like,
I
is he
guess
even going to start? Is he even
I
going to
like
start?
I like Boise bringing in the competition because how often are you going to be able to bring a guy to Boise State who was considered a top two quarterback in his class? I mean, you got to take the
That's true.
chance, man. You got to take the chance, and if anything, you've at least got like a good backup.
I mean, they low key got a kind of a stacked room. Maddox Maxon, you're gonna have Malachi Nelson, and then Taylon Green, which I don't know what happened with Taylon Green. I think he's still there, right?
I don't recall, but I
I
remember
for
he's
one
quite athletic.
I, for one, was hyping up Taylon Green pretty well. I don't know if he left in the portal. There's no information on him, but either way, like even with just those two guys, with Madsen and Malachi Nelson, that's a pretty solid QB room for Boise State. And then if you throw Taylon Green in there, whew, that's a hell of a QB room for Boise State. So yeah, man, I'm very, very interested to see how his career just pans out. And but right now it's kind of looking like it's on the bus train, but we'll see. We don't want to throw out that word yet because we haven't seen him play in a full
It's
season.
hard to
But
say that when we haven't seen him play yet. Yeah, I can't really do that just yet. But yeah, the writing on the wall doesn't look good so far, so we shall see. What about Daquan Finn, Shub? From Toledo superstar over to Baylor in what could be Aranda's final dance. Um, Daquan Finn, you got Dave Aranda's job in the palm of your hands. Can you take the Baylor faithful and get Baylor back to at least a bowl game? Maybe. Daquan Finn is a very good quarterback. I think he's certainly an upgrade of Blake Shapen. Bye bye, Blake Shapen. That era is over. I'm interested to see what Baylor's going to do, man, because we didn't picture Baylor falling apart and becoming what they were last year. Granted, like I was pretty confident that they'd be under their win total. I wasn't confident that they would be as bad as they were last year. So I think with Daquan Finn, they automatically improve their ceiling, or I should say their floor at the very minimum, so long as he can stay healthy. So I'm really interested to see what Daquan Finn can do. I think it's a really good pickup for Baylor.
I definitely agree. This was a perfect instance of a guy that was in the G5 that was balling out that we knew that was going to get a power four job going into this year. We just kind of didn't know where. And way back when, I remember some random sportsbook put out odds that he was like favored to go to Michigan or Ohio State because at the time, it looked like Ohio State was low key kind of screwed with the quarterback situation. And I was like, all right, that would be crazy if he ended up going to Ohio State, but obviously that didn't happen. But Baylor is definitely a step down from that, but it's still Baylor. So I'd say I'd say it's a good pickup for both sides here. Obviously, great career move for Daquan Finn. I really am always interested to see how guys that are really good at the G5 level, how that translates to the P5 level. Usually I feel like it does, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And yeah, I mean, if you're a Baylor fan right now, you need reasons for optimism because the last 2 years just haven't been great. And we'll see. I mean, Daquan Finn might be the guy that can help single-handedly keep Dave Aranda from getting fired. I mean, that's kind of what's on the table here going into 2024 in Waco. So it'll be a very interesting season for a lot of reasons for Baylor. But yeah, I'd say good pickup for the Bears. Kyle McCord. Now, Ohio State, of course, a huge movement in the quarterback room, of course. This one was one of the very first high-profile quarterbacks to leave and announce his transfer decision early on in this cycle. And he chose to go to Syracuse and follow Fran Brown with a lot of other players. Fidel Diggs, a good defensive end from Texas A&M, among many others that are going to Syracuse to play for Coach Brown. And yeah, Syracuse is kind of building up a little bit of a hype team here. Definitely getting quality of players that they're normally not used to getting. And it's a chance for Kyle McCord, who definitely got scrutinized at Ohio State. But let's be real here. I mean, like, you're filling in the shoes of CJ Stroud, who's lighting up in the NFL. So it's like I feel like any quarterback would have been set up to kind of be perceived in a negative way in front of Buckeye fans based on the guy that was his predecessor. So he decided, screw that. I'm out of here. I'm going to go to Syracuse and be the guy and have a chance to not have a fan base that's just scrutinizing me for honestly playing like solid for normal quarterback standards. But of course, he's going to
Well,
have a huge downgrade in receiver talent around him. That goes
yeah.
without saying. But what do you think about this? How do you think it's going to work out for Kyle McCord? And what do you think about this transfer decision just in general?
So we'll see. Fran Brown, I mean, wanted to get a name that was known, and at least he knows that that guy's got some starting experience. So, I mean, we at least see Fran Brown doing some work in the portal to start off his career. So that's something that's good. But Kyle McCord, man, there's a little bit of a red flag for me. And one of the red flags is, I mean, he was committed to, like, supposedly to Nebraska initially. And then, Dylan Raiola commits and he immediately, like, decommits. And then that's why he ends up at Syracuse. And so it tells me that he's not looking for competition. That's why he went to Syracuse. That's why he didn't want to compete at Nebraska with what would be, a true freshman. As talented as Rayola is, he's a true freshman. True freshmen are usually pretty raw, unless you're Noah Fafita. But anyway, I gotta say, man, I just don't. I think that speaks to his competitive nature, and I don't want to dog on him, but I just don't know how successful he's going to be at Syracuse. You were at Ohio State with Marvin Harrison Jr. and a bunch of other talented wide receivers, probably one of the best wide receiving cores that money can buy, and you still were kind of an okay quarterback. You take all that away, as you were mentioning. I don't know that he's a good quarterback. I feel like we're going to see some subpar play, maybe like 18 touchdowns, 10 picks kind of thing. Just an average Joe. Nothing special, nothing to write home about, but enough to where I guess if the other team makes enough mistakes, you can beat them on a given day. But you're not going to be going out there and shocking the world anytime soon. That's how I see this particular move for Kyle McCord. Now, hopefully it works out for him. Don't want to completely crap on him, but I just don't see it being something that's going to be too majorly impactful for Syracuse, but I could be wrong.
So to be fair, if you do look at his raw numbers last year at Ohio State, they're actually pretty good. But then again, you kind of have to take that a little bit with a grain of salt because he's at Ohio State. He has like four NFL guys in his receiving room.
And
He's
a lot
got
of those were
Marvin
against
Harrison.
teams that they just, outclass in terms of star talent.
Exactly. And there is definitely that was the point. There's definitely something to take away from that. But if you just look at the raw numbers there, I feel like it's not like he's bad. I feel like he's probably just an average quarterback, kind of like similar to what your assessment is saying. And we'll see how that plays out at Syracuse. Obviously, his numbers are going to go down from last year, but in terms of the quarterback play at Syracuse, I mean, he might be able to elevate the quarterback or at least the passing game. Garrett Schrader was quietly a pretty solid quarterback for Syracuse the last few years, like very
He was a
quietly.
good quarterback. Yeah, absolutely.
He
His
was
whole
very
career, Garrett Schrader was low key, a pretty solid quarterback.
He was. And McCord might be a passing upgrade over Schrader, but in terms of dual threat, definitely
Yeah,
not.
definitely not.
But
Yep.
we'll see. I mean, there is a very decent chance that McCord is an upgrade over Schrader, but there also is a decent chance that he's not. So it's very we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see type of deals here. So very interesting. But I mean, hey, good for him for going somewhere with a new coach that's kind of getting some hype, a place that's kind of way off the radar in terms of location and prestige and sort of see if he can revive his career. So be
I'll
interested to
tell you
see
what,
which one
Shu.
goes out.
Let me swap one dual threat for another. UCF. John Reese Plumlee decides to enter the draft. What? I was so bamboozled by that when KJ Jefferson announced he was going to UCF. I said, "What about John Reese Plumlee?" And I looked into it and I'm like, I didn't even know he declared for the draft. What? Why are you declaring for the draft in such a talent-rich quarterback class? John Reese Plumlee would be so wise to come back, but I guess he's just sick of playing. I don't know, man. Maybe because he's getting hurt a lot. I mean, I can understand that because JRP does have an injury history, but I don't know, man. I will say this: KJ Jefferson has had a good career. A little bit down last year. Arkansas was pretty dang bad, but the thing is that Arkansas team, KJ Jefferson, people forget just how great he was. They went as he went. And when Arkansas was pretty solid, it's because KJ Jefferson was being fantastic. Without KJ Jefferson, that team was not accomplishing anything. So I think this is an upgrade for UCF, believe it or not. He's only got like a 3-star transfer rating, but I really like the experience that KJ Jefferson brings. I like the size, I like the ability to run, pass, all those things. And he's more durable than your man JRP. So we'll see, man. We'll see. I definitely like this move for UCF. I think it plays well to keep their offense very similar to how it was with JRP without having to rewrite the playbook too much by getting a player like KJ Jefferson. The only other player you could have got other than KJ Jefferson that might have been great for your particular system is maybe like DeQuan Finn.
Yes, definitely. I think to your point, it's a perfect system fit for KJ Jefferson. So you would think that probably won't skip a beat, for what UCF runs and what KJ Jefferson's skill set is. And yeah, you mentioned the numbers dipping in 2023. If you really look at it, I mean, he took a huge dip in 2023 versus his sophomore and junior years in 21 and 22. So it's like, man, there's a lot that went on for Arkansas last year. A lot of that had to do with, a huge dismissal of talent from that year as well in front of him. Offensive line play definitely took a huge hit. It was just not a good year last year for Arkansas, and I could see this being sort of a, fresh start, a potential chance for him to regain his 2021 and 22 form and have a bit of a bounce back season at UCF. And I think he can do that. And plus, you'll be playing against the Big 12 competition versus, the SEC West. So a little bit step down of a competition, too. I think maybe that would help as well. But all in all, I mean, I think that this is a great, great pickup for UCF. And I agree with you. There's a chance here that he ends up being a lot better than John Reese Plumlee is. And I mean, UCF is definitely, just in general, I feel like such a sleeper team going into next year because we
Oh,
talked
absolutely.
about this on
They're
on
going to
the
be one of the
pod.
better teams in the Big 12 for foreseeable future.
Yeah, we talked about this at the end of the year when we were discussing win totals and how that panned out. UCF was kind of unlucky this year. Like they were definitely a little bit better than what their record suggested. So I feel like this is a team that can definitely take a big jump next year, especially now that they've been in the Big 12 for a year. I think that they could potentially take that jump. And then if you get 2021 or 2022 KJ Jefferson, like that could be a Big 12 contender right there. So good move for KJ. Good move for UCF.
Well, Alabama's had a lot of portal exodus now that the GOAT, the undisputed GOAT, has decided to call it quits. Julian Sayin, the prize gem of their recruiting class, is off to Ohio State. Ohio State's really basking in a lot of these departures, man. Ohio State's getting talent after talent after talent, so I think they're opening up the piggy bank as well. But
They can't keep getting
how much
away
does
with
this
this, man.
how much does this affect? Well, I'll say this, man. Ohio State's sitting over there. They just watched Michigan win the Natty, and they said, "I don't care what it costs. Blank check. Get everybody. We can't keep losing to Michigan. This is unacceptable." Like we already know how that meeting went. Those two teams hate each other. If the other one wins the Natty, the other one is gonna spend a bag, man. Like anything to beat the other one, and that's what makes college football great, man. These rivalries. But hey, Julian saying we'll see. Like we've had 5-star guys before go for money and haven't necessarily been as good as we would have expected. I mean, Quinn Ewers is getting better. I mean, we have to acknowledge that he took like 2 years off of football. He's getting better, but I still wouldn't say he's an elite quarterback. He's still got some building to do. So we all remember that man got $1 million to go to Ohio State. Julian Sain's kind of in the same boat here. He hasn't played a down of college football. We'll see if that works out for him. We'll see.
Yeah, I will walk back the Ewers comparison though, because I feel like at least Sain's head coach retired. I mean, he went to Alabama to play for Nick Saban, and
Yeah,
Nick Saban left, whereas
and
Ewers
Ewers
just
just went
went
to
to
collect the
Ohio
check.
State just to
Yeah.
collect a check and then go to where he actually wanted to go. So I think that's a little bit different.
Well,
Also,
I was thinking more in the
Saban,
talent comparison.
yeah, no, oh yeah, for sure. Coming out of high school with their grade and everything, I will say this, it also is unique because Sane like had just enrolled at Alabama. Like he ended up transferring like because again, he hasn't played yet. He's going to be a true freshman this upcoming year. So he goes to
Yeah, and
early
he's already in the
enroll at
portal.
Alabama and then Saban
He's the
retires and
crown
he's
jewel of
like,
their drive
crap.
class.
It's like, what the hell, man? I just enrolled here. Like I haven't even gotten to spring ball yet and I already got a transfer. So
Yep.
it's kind of man, that's just today's age of college football, man. But
Dude,
so he's good.
he's at his first college party with like the Kappa Sig house in Alabama. And then he just gets the notification, same retires. He's like, deuces, y'all. Like,
I mean, pretty much. But yeah, that's kind of funny. But anyways, tremendous pickup for Ohio State. Like this dude was getting some hype coming out of high school, man. Like this dude was getting some hype. Like a lot of people were saying like they could see him having the potential to be like the next guy at Alabama, like the next the next Tua, the next Bryce Young. So now that he's at Ohio State, has Ohio State found their next CJ Stroud?
Maybe,
Maybe,
man.
maybe.
It's we can only speculate based on high school tape, what other people say about someone. Um, but we don't know until it happens, man. We don't know until it happens. I mean, look at Malachi Nelson. We were just talking about that. He was ranked number 2 in his whole class. And right now, of course, we haven't seen him play yet, but based upon the history and then landing at Boise State and USC's over here looking for a million quarterbacks, what's that say about him? Is that a talent issue? Is there? I guess we'll find out, man. We don't know until we see it. So, but the speculation is certainly a fun part of the sport. As it stands now, Julian Saint's supposed to be really dang good. So, what a pickup for Ohio State.
I feel like this could be a situation that we look back on like maybe 2 to 3 years from now, and we'll be like, it'll be one of those like what if questions. Like, yeah, what if Julian Saint had actually stayed at Alabama back in 2024? Like, if he actually like didn't leave after enrolling for 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
what if he had stayed there? But we'll see. We'll see. All
Very
right.
curious.
So now that we've covered the next batch of quarterbacks that we really needed to cover, a lot of that's old news, but felt like we needed to get our takes on that. So let's talk about the transfer portal classes that these schools have accumulated themselves. And, I kind of decided to prompt up this discussion here because I was looking at the 247 recruiting rankings, or the transfer portal rankings, actually. And I was browsing that today when we were doing our research for this pod. And I go on there and I'm like, man, Ohio State doesn't have the number one class. Like,
That's what
I
I
was
would
kind
have
of
thought,
surprised
man,
by
because
that.
they're kind of scooping up everybody.
I mean, Ole Miss. I was not surprised they the number one class, but then I'm like, Texas A&M has the number two portal class. Colorado's number five. Louisville's number six. I'm like, I don't know if I agree with these rankings. So
Yeah,
I
I feel
go and
like
I
I
look
feel
at
like they're almost getting kind of lazy with their portal rankings because I look
they're
here
doing
sometimes like
quantity over quality.
KJ Jefferson's an 89 on there, or at least the last time I checked, and I was like,
Ugh,
he's a 3-star, and
that's a
you've
bit
got some
harsh.
dudes in here who are just bad. I mean, Jabbar Muhammad's only a 93 grade. I would put him higher than that. The dude's
I
great.
mean, he's probably a day two NFL draft pick going into next year, assuming like he's doesn't like get hurt or something.
I feel like he could have got drafted this year if he declared, but
Oh, 100%. He would have probably been a
yeah,
day two pick this year.
yep.
So yeah, it's yeah, 24/7 Sports is definitely, some of the rankings are a little bit questionable. I definitely trust their high school recruiting rankings because
Yeah, but their
actually they
portal
have
rankings
data on
are
this. If you look
yeah.
at their guys coming out of high school, like they've actually been the best when it comes to all the different what are the different recruiting sites that do rankings on, or not on three because they're new, but whatever, Rivals and ESPN, and you look at the
Rivals is
draft.
horrible.
Yeah, you look at the draft over the last few years, 24/7 has actually been the most accurate when it came to like the rounds that the guys were drafted in versus what they had them rated out of high school, which is honestly pretty impressive. So there's
Not
actual
sponsored
data
by
on that.
24/7 Sports, by the way.
We're not, but it is a great site. But the point is their portal rankings are definitely very questionable. Very, very questionable. And then when you look at the class rankings, I'm like, they're putting too much stock in the quantity here, because if you're just getting like a bunch of, no name 3-star transfers, I mean, I don't really care about that. I want to see like if you're improving like positions of need with like the top 5-star, 4-star transfers. So I'm like looking at Ohio State and Texas, and I'm like, Ohio State and Texas need to be like top three minimally.
I mean, Ohio State got Quinshon Judkins too. So I mean, like to me, Ohio State to me has the most impactful transfer class, and that would put Ole Miss up there too. Ole Miss may have a lot of guys, but I think they're getting some impactful guys too. On Texas, I mean, the teams who are bringing in the most impactful players are the best teams in the portal. I like kind of what you're speaking to here. Quality over quantity. I can bring in, I can bring in 10 Mustangs, but if I bring in 5 Lambos, which one has more value? The 5 Lambos by a lot, by the way. So we'll see, man. We'll see.
So that leads into my next question. Looking at these classes, what would you say your top three are? Because I kind of have two in mind for top three. Actually, I think I do have my top three. Well, actually, no, I walked that back. I think I have my top four. but then I think there's a little bit of like a drop from my top four. But I have
I'd
the same
say
sort of pattern of logic as what you just said. I value quality over quantity.
I've got Ohio State, Texas, Oregon, Ole Miss. I like those classes.
Dude, I literally have the same exact four.
Yeah.
Same exact four. But all right, so let's not be boring here. Let's rank them. Let's rank them real quick. We got time. So
Ohio State won.
I'd
I'm gonna
have to go
go
with Ohio State one sheerly because of like the top end talent that's coming in, obviously. I mean, they got Caleb Downs. Like
absolutely,
Caleb
yeah.
Downs is basically I
They
mean,
got
he's on
Quinton
track to be
Judkins,
Minka
Kalen Downs.
Fitzpatrick 2.0.
They
Like
got
he's
Sayin. I mean,
they're gonna be or sorry, Caleb Downs is I feel like as of right now, like he's a surefire like top 10 pick in the draft a couple of years from now. Like if he stays on the same trajectory, he's got a kind of like the Minka Fitzpatrick career track so far. Like he's for sure could be a top 10 pick. So you got him. So I mean, like that's already pretty good. And then you're gonna have Jim Knowles coordinating that defense. Like, oh boy.
uh-huh.
And then on top of that, as you just mentioned, you got Julian Sayin for the future, which is huge. You got Quinshawn Judkins at running back, Will Howard at quarterback, and then you got some other
Nothing
depth
but
pieces like
impact
Seth
players right
McLaughlin.
there. Yep.
Yeah, they got top end. This is best class, most
Oh,
impactful,
absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. I'd go with probably Texas at two, because Texas really broke out the piggy bank, man. I would say Texas has the second best recruiting class in the transfer portal. I mean, I think it's going to stay that way for a while. They're going to have like a top two and like top five high school recruiting ranking every year, and like a top three in transfer ranking every year. I think that's the new Texas football.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I'm gonna push back a little bit here. I'd actually say Oregon is a good case for number two. I
I have
think
them
it's
at
like
three. I'll do
I
them
think
at three.
Oregon, Texas are like 2A, 2B because I keep forgetting Oregon got Evan Stewart. Like Evan
They
Stewart is
did.
gonna
Oregon's
pop
killing
off
it.
next year. With Dylan
Hmm.
Gabriel
Oregon's
too.
killing it.
Look at Oregon's class. I mean, they got Evan Stewart, who's going to absolutely pop off next year in that system with Gabriel throwing to him. They got Dante Moore, who of course definitely like didn't play well, but that could be a future piece if he, gets back on track. Maybe he's got unrealized potential. I like that a lot. They got Jamari Caldwell from Houston, Jabbar Muhammad from Washington, who we were just talking about, who's a very impactful starting corner. I mean, I like Oregon's top end of their class a lot too. So
Hmm.
it's I don't know, it definitely rivals Texas. Well, let me ask you this. Who do you think's better, Isaiah Bond or Evan Stewart?
It's hard to say, but they're both very, very talented because neither one has been overly productive, but they have both been playmakers when
And they both
shown.
had crappy like passing quarterbacks thrown to them.
Exactly. And so it's really hard to say definitively. I think if you get either one of them, you're pretty dang happy with yourself. But I think I would take Stewart over Bond
Yeah. I'm a huge Evan Stewart stan. Like
because
I think that guy's
Stewart's
gonna
a
pop off.
joystick, man. He's a joystick.
And but I will say, I mean, Texas got the defensive players like Trey Moore from UTSA and then Makuba, who's the safety for Clemson, really good.
Hmm.
I'm liking that a lot. And then Silas Bolden too. Silas Bolden from Oregon State,
And
wide
Silas
receiver.
Bolden, I think he's only ranked as a three-star on there or something like that. He's
He's a
actually a really good
94
receiver.
star, but Silas
90, but
Bolden is
he's a really good
yeah,
wide receiver. You don't really know about him because he plays for Oregon State, but
right.
man, they're I mean, Texas got some great talent coming in.
Maybe well, I don't want to be boring, but I kind of now that I've looked at it, I think I'd give the slight edge to Texas, but I like Oregon right up there at number 3. And then number
That's so we have
4
the
is
exact same rankings done.
yeah, but see this but you know what? You know what, man? I want to be different. I want to have different opinions, but
You already
then I
put it
feel
out
like
there. People know it's fake now. If you
we
change
both
it.
we both I think very similarly, and we also like I think we judge things pretty objectively now. We've been doing this long enough, so I think it's a good thing in practice, but it also makes for some pretty boring takes that we think along the
I
same
will
lines.
say, like, yes, this is why First Take and like and all these shows, Undisputed, do so well because one of them will come out and be like, Nick Saban is the most overrated coach ever, and he'll be like, what? What? We don't really do that because we kind of stay true to ourselves a little bit. You know dang well those guys purposely say something outlandish to get something going. But the thing is, I think you and I are too prideful to do that. So,
Yes.
but look, we don't always agree, or at least if we do agree, we usually have a different take or a different perspective on it. And I think it's important to notate those varying degrees of perspective to really paint a full picture, or maybe even influence some people's opinions, or maybe people can influence our opinions. That's why we have this channel, right? So really cool. Um, and yeah, I have no problems with us being in lockstep on that.
All right, so then I'm assuming we both agreed number four is Ole Miss, and Ole Miss definitely in terms of quantity is knocking it out of the park. In terms of depth, knocking it out of the park. Top end, not as quite as great as the previous three schools, but it's still pretty solid. Like first of all, getting Walter
Depth does
Nolan,
matter.
yeah,
Yep.
getting Walter Nolan for, but let's think of it this way: for in terms of like players that are going to improve the team, Ole Miss's Achilles heel last year was his defense. Defense kind of sucked. And they just went in the portal and just Lane just went like, give me all the best defensive players money can buy, and they got a lot of them. Walter Nolan from Texas A&M, a 5-star defensive line rating, that's huge. Getting Princely Uman Milan from Florida, who as a
Florida.
Gator fan I can attest he's a pretty good player. I think he sort of gets undervalued because he played for a bad team last year, but he's a pretty good player on the edge. So already that's a huge defensive line improvements. And then Antoine Wells at South Carolina, dude.
Great
Antoine
player.
Wells is a good
Great player.
receiver. He's a great player. Like I think his
Mhm.
rating's a little under like 24/7 only has him as a 93. I think that should be a little higher.
Yeah, he's a great player. I mean, Ole Miss definitely is going to be impactful this upcoming season. I'm excited to see what the new look SEC, Big 12, Big 10. I'm excited to see the new look of those three conferences. ACC doesn't excite me as much because that was like a desperation ad, and I don't even think that that league with those additions is going to be together for more than a few years. I think that whole conglomeration or whatever random pooling of teams is not going to last. So, but I am interested in seeing if here in the future will college football become a power three instead of a power four. And here's what I mean by that, Shub. Let me ask you this question. And I did release a poll on this the other day. If FSU successfully gets out of the ACC grant of rights and is able to get out of the ACC contract, what do you think happens? I think there's one of two ways this could go. I think if FSU gets out, then you have teams like Clemson, you have teams like Miami, you have teams like North Carolina saying, okay, check please. If they're able to get out, why can't I get out? Let me out too. They join the major leagues. And then maybe the ACC falls apart from there and gets picked apart. The best of the upper teams that are remaining go to the Big 12, and then you have another filter down into like the American and whatnot, and the dissolution of the ACC. Or you have those top teams leave the ACC, and then the ACC adds other schools like Tulane and all that, and rebuilds. What do you think would be most likely?
I think I think FSU and similar company are leaving. I think it's inevitable at this point.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I mean, based upon that dominoes, so both of those situations like the assumption is that FSU leaves, and with FSU getting out, the schools like Miami, the schools like Clemson, the schools like North Carolina are saying, okay, well we want out too then. And so, assuming those big dogs leave, what happens with the rest of the ACC? Do you think that it falls apart in another poaching event where the Big 12 gets like the next best four and then the rest fall to G5? Or do you think
Okay.
it's going to be, or do you think the ACC will be able to survive and then maybe go add some teams like Tulane and some other decent markets that are in the G5?
I gotcha. I misunderstood the question. So, yes, now that is very interesting. So, under that assumption, assuming Florida State leaves, likely North Carolina, Clemson, maybe Miami probably leave. And then is this before I answer the question, is it pushing a little bit too far to think maybe the Big 12 would be like, "Hey Louisville, hey Pitt, like hey NC State,
That's what I'm
come here."
saying. So that's what I'm saying. So that's the first option. So the
Yeah.
first one I was saying of the teams remaining, do you think it would be more likely that the ACC, like of the 1-2 options, do you think it's more likely that the ACC goes to add other teams and successfully does so without getting poached? Or do you think it's more likely if the Big 12 says, hey, NC State, hey, Louisville, hey, Georgia Tech, love your markets. Do you want to come play in the Big 12? And then
You,
the ACC fails after that point. Do you think it's more likely that that happens, or do you think it's more likely that the ACC is able to survive and add other teams? Maybe the ACC even says, hey, Oregon State, Wazoo, what's up, man?
yeah. So now I fully understand the question. So that's actually a great question. I feel like it's sort of 50-50, but I would lean more towards the Big 12 coming for the next batch of quality programs. Because once you, I mean, and keep in mind here, I'm trying to eliminate all bias possible, but we are a Big 12. We're Big 12 fans here, so I'm trying not to let that dilute my opinion here. But what is the ACC without its top brands? Once you cut off the top batch of schools like Miami, UNC, Clemson, Florida State, your next best program slash brands are, Pitt
NC,
and well, NC
yeah,
State. I
Pitt,
would say
NC
NC
State,
State definitely would be the top program.
Virginia,
Virginia Tech, I'd say is more of a valuable brand that
Georgia
has a little bit of
Tech,
pedigree. Georgia
because it's
Tech,
in Atlanta, but that would be the top of your league.
right. That's the top, that's the cream of the crop. Now looking at
So you
that
wouldn't even really
league,
be considered a power conference at that point in time.
it would be very generous to consider it a power conference. And a lot of people say that about the Big 12 right now, but I'm like, at least the Big 12 still from top to bottom is still very solid, even though it doesn't have like the blue blood brands.
Hmm.
But at that point in time, I would say, okay, like let's be real here. The Big 12 from top to bottom is a significantly still better conference than the ACC at that point.
Hmm.
And because teams like the teams that would be at the top, like the NC States and the Pitts and the Virginia Techs and Georgia Techs and the Wake Forests, if you slide them into the Big 12 right now, I'd say, I mean, NC State, I think, could be a top half program in the Big 12 right now.
I would
But the
love to
rest of
see
those
NC
schools,
State. I would love to see NC State in the Big 12.
yeah, Louisville, we keep forgetting Louisville too.
I would love to see Louisville also. That should have
Louisville,
happened
NC
already,
State,
but you know,
yeah,
God dang Bowlesby.
Louisville, NC State, Virginia Tech, and maybe Pitt. I would
Those would
say
be good
you
additions.
slide them
Bring
into the
bring the
Big
Pitt West
12.
Virginia
Yeah.
rivalry. Yeah.
They would be great fits with the Big 12, but I wouldn't I mean if you slide them into the conference right now, like they're they're fighting with everybody else for middle of the pack. They're not distinguished, above the rest.
Hmm.
So, and
But
that's
we
the
are
top. We're
looking
talking about the
into.
top of the ACC here. So I would say most likely those schools leave for the Big 12 thinking, okay, that's a better league that's probably going to pay a lot more money because another thing too about the ACC, I know I'm ragging on here, but this is a big point. Sorry, ACC fans, but like outside of a handful of programs, like your conference does not care about football. Like it does not. Like the quality of talent shows it, the actual product shows it, like the program's actual performance the last decade outside of Clemson and Florida State has shown it. And hell, we look at our numbers on this channel, like we're big enough now, we're monetized to where we actually can look at our numbers and be like, wow, there's a huge subset of we kind of get an idea of like who's a fan of who. ACC content does not do well at all, and that has been a consistent theme since we started doing this channel. Like, I'm sorry, guys. At least the Big 12, it may not have the biggest brands and it may not have the biggest schools, but the Big 12 fan bases like desperately care about football. They are passionate about football. The ACC does not have that outside of, a handful of programs. So I'd say for those reasons, the money would be a little bit more lucrative in the Big 12. And I think the Big 12 would be definitely looking at some juicy additions with a handful of those schools that we just listed. I'd say that's more likely, but I wouldn't say like that would be the surefire. Oh yeah, without a doubt, like they're screwed. They're gonna go to the Big 12. I don't think like that would be a guarantee, but I think it would be most likely.
I think here's what happens. If that happens, those four teams we'll assume are going to the Big Ten, SEC, the top four teams, which makes their cut of the pie in the next contract even more substantial because they're the bigger brands. So the discrepancy between the Big Ten and the SEC is already tremendous. So now, if you're in the leftover ACC realm, you have to consider, well, obviously we can't get the SEC Big Ten money, and now without those brands, our cut of the pie in the ACC contract should we renegotiate, because that probably will be what happens if those brands are able to get out. Um, will we be able to get the money to even stay remotely competitive? They probably wouldn't even get Big 12 money. So
No.
I think the Big 12 and the ACC would look at each other and they would say, hey, we'll take your six best schools that offer the most value to increase our revenue share in our product. We'll come together as a like a 20 team league, and we'll be third in revenue. We'll still be far behind, but we will still be solid number three by a mile. Like there won't be anyone touching the top three leagues. We won't be touching the top two, but no one will be touching us past that. So I think that's what happens, honestly. And I think the rest of the teams who get left out end up merging into maybe like the American or wherever the case may be. I think the future of the sport is teams like SMU, Oregon State, Wazoo, Liberty, Tulane are all destined to be in like their own fourth best like conference, but it's not considered a power conference. It's like that highly respected, like what the American is or was before realignment. It was
Yeah.
respected as the best G5 conference by far, but the big boys are going to be in the Power Three. And I think the Power Three, we're at Power Four right now, but I think Power Three is where we're headed. I think that's the future of the sport. And we'll see, man. It's all about who gets an invite.
So let me ask you this, just for the sake of the exercise and food for thought. If the ACC in the scenario that we mentioned, if they were to actually stay together by filling in with more schools that haven't been poached yet, what schools do you think they would be able to get in order to keep that conference together
So
and to keep the
here's
Louisvilles and Pitts and Virginia Techs from leaving?
So here, there's a few schools that I think they will go after pretty hardcore. Um, and I think Oregon State and Washington State, since they already added Stanford and Cal, would make a lot of sense. So you can get more
True.
people to play on that side of the country. And those are passionate fan bases, and that also puts more teams in your Western time slot. So it gives you more eyes out there. So I think those two would be one, option 1A and 1B. That'd be the first on their list. And then I think they would look over at Liberty and say, hey, you guys have 60,000 students. You're one of the largest schools in America, and you're an up and coming, you're a newer program, but you're up and coming, and you have the resources, certainly from an alumni base being that large, to potentially become even better than you are now. I would extend Liberty an offer. And then I would actually look over to New Orleans at Tulane. They have a good football program. They're in the New Orleans market, which is a very valuable football market. That's why the NFL has a team there. That's why the NBA has a team there. It's a very valuable market. And so if you're able to secure those four teams and you're able to keep everyone else, the ACC can probably survive. And so that's what I'm wondering. Is that more likely, or is the Big 12 dealing a death blow to the ACC more likely?
Well, I have actually another school. I do think Tulane is a slam dunk. I think Tulane is a slam dunk to be like the next expansion candidate that's sought after. So I'm thinking about it this way. The ACC right now, since they added Cal, Stanford, SMU, which is gonna, man, that's gonna take a lot. I'm gonna really have to get used to that. That is just so just like putting the square peg in a round hole going into next year. But anyways, so they're gonna be at 17 teams starting next year, which is an odd number, which is honestly that's gonna be good luck with scheduling all that. That it's an odd number. So every single week you're gonna have an ACC team that can't play a conference game because there's an odd number. But anyways, so they're at 17. We're assuming you chop off the top four, so they go down to 13. And then I'm like, okay, you're gonna look at five schools to get to 18, so you're at an even number. Get back up to that number of 18, which is what the Big Ten is right now. Five schools: Oregon State, Washington State, Liberty, Tulane, and there's one that you forgot about, Memphis. Don't forget about Memphis.
Memphis is a good
Bam.
candidate.
That's your five schools right there. Memphis,
And
Liberty,
I think that would
Tulane.
actually, I think that league would survive being poached.
I think would have a chance. I think would have a chance. I don't, but I don't know if I think it would have a chance, but I don't know if it's enough to. I don't know if it's enough to be like, hey, we're still like kind of comparable to the Big 12, and we'll get the same
Yeah,
money. I don't know
I
about
think
that.
those numbers would be like, I think we're comparable, like we're getting comparable, or the top four teams that are left in the conference might be like, we could get comparable money, but if we join the Big 12, we can get even more money, you know?
I think so. Here's the thing about the Big 12, and I know we're extending this topic a good bit here, but I think the Big 12, listen, for all there is going to be a huge separation between the SEC and the Big 10 and the rest. We all know that. But what I do think at least the Big 12, if you want to have a glass half full take here, what at least it has going for itself in the future is that
Basketball.
there needs to be like a third league out there for people to watch and for ESPN and Fox to have games on because if we're going full SEC Big Ten centric, which we are, there's only so many like teams that make up those leagues that can be playing conference games, all the time throughout those time slots. And we know how college football is. Like college football, you got to have a bunch of games on. You got to have Thursday night games, etc. There's a lot more than just like the NFL where it's one Sunday. And there's only so much SEC and Big Ten to go around. The Big 12, I think, has the advantage over the ACC in that the Big 12 actually one has a competitive top to bottom league where you're going to have like no teams that are probably not going to like separate themselves from the pack in terms of resources. So the games are most often going to be competitive and it's still going to be a fun league and it's not like yes, they don't have blue bloods, but the Big 12 still has a bunch of brands that are still recognizable. Like even casual fans, even though they don't care about the Utahs and Kansas States and Oklahoma States and TCUs, they still at least know who they are. At least have a breath of like, oh yeah, like they've been good in the past. Not the first team I would watch, but I at least know who they are. Whereas like, do the casuals care about Boston College and Virginia and Georgia Tech and Wake Forest? I think the Big 12 has a little bit of an advantage there. And the Big 12, like I mentioned earlier, it has the passion, man. It has passion. Like at the ESPN and Fox need to like broadcast games where there's actually like fans in the stands and the leagues are competitive and they actually, care about football. Like there needs to be that entity to fill that void because there's only so much SEC and Big 10 to go around. And I think the Big 12, if you want to look at it from that perspective, at least the Big 12 is there to like fill in that gap for the TV networks. And let's be real here, those are the ones that run the sport. I think the TV execs would be like, yeah, let's make sure our second tier product, the Big 12, like let's make sure the Big 12 is still like, keeping up on good feet here. And I'd say they'd be more incentivized to
I,
add the
I know.
Louisvilles and the Virginia Techs and the
I
NC States.
agree with that because honestly, the Big 12 would be such an exciting league if you were. I mean, look, the SEC and Big Ten. I mean, assuming those four teams leave and say they get two each, I mean, they're quite substantially large leagues. The Big 12 is already getting up there, but hey, if you just have three super leagues with really good teams, the top 60 basically, then hey, you're doing pretty good. I would love to see NC State in the Big 12. I would love to see Louisville in the Big 12. I would love to see Georgia Tech, although I have heard the Big 10 is interested in them for their market. And I also wouldn't be against Tulane to bring in the New Orleans market and get some more of the more exposure in the southeast region of the country, the New Orleans area, get some of those recruits in the Big 12 territory. So it'd be really interesting, man. I think realignment is obviously not done. We'll see more of what happens here in the upcoming next few years. If once FSU inevitably gets out, it's not a matter of if they can get out; they will get out. It's just a matter of what it's going to cost them and how much time it's going to take. Um, so yeah, I'm really curious to see how these dominoes fall, man. But my early prediction is that the death of the ACC is imminent. They will not survive past what 2034. That's assuming that the grant of rights last all the way up to that point
Yeah, I
without
think
being
it's
broken.
34. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is the absolute oldest the ACC I think can get before it falls apart.
So one last quick discussion here before we move on because it keeps bringing ideas to my brain, this discussion from the Big 12's perspective and as fellow Big 12 enthusiasts. The Big 12 is 16 right now. If the Big 12 was to get four teams, let's say they poach four teams from the ACC to get to 20, who would be your top four programs you would want as a Big 12 fan from the
Oh, just
ACC?
just as I listed it, man. So I'm gonna assume that Miami, North Carolina, FSU, and Clemson are gone. Like they're in the top two leagues.
Right.
Okay, so you can't get them. So I'd say NC State because I think it's a great program. A lot of competitive, like they're very competitive, constantly. Very, I think they should be very respected. Actually, I'll go Virginia
Tremendous
Tech
program.
too.
Yep.
Yeah, Virginia Tech. passionate fan base at Virginia Tech. I mean, like Enter Sandman, all that. Bring that to the Big 12, inject Enter Sandman into my veins, man. I would love that so much. And I would have an
Yep.
excuse to go to that game. Virginia Tech, 100%. Um, and then I'd probably go Georgia Tech because
Hmm.
I do like the idea of having the Atlanta market. And I do think Georgia Tech has resources to where they can eventually become a really good school. They are in Atlanta, man. So, I mean, planting the Big 12's flagship, or not their flagship, but the Big 12's flag in Atlanta in the heart of SEC territory, Georgia, uh, yeah, 100%. And I think that's more like a strategic dream pick for me to get Georgia Tech. And then the last one, I'd probably say Louisville, man, because they're a good program as well. So, and they would do well in the Big 12. Those are the four that I would ideally really, really like to get if I got to pick my four of the remaining.
So no
How about you,
Pitt,
Shoot?
no Pitt, no UVA. UVA
I
is
would,
actually getting SEC or Big Ten interest, but
yeah, because of the market. But I tell you what, like,
it ain't a
I would
football
not be
school.
opposed because these leagues are getting out of control, man. I would not be opposed, and this is going to be a little crazy. I would not be opposed to the Big 12 going to from 16 to 24, taking four
Sure.
ACs, taking four of these, and then doing two divisions of 12, um, and then having like a championship. Just, I mean, that's basically what college is going to become. We have to face it.
Yeah.
And that means you could get those schools. You can get Virginia Tech. You can get Virginia. You can get NC State. You can get Georgia Tech. But then you can also look outward and you can get the schools like Tulane. You can get the schools like maybe Memphis or Liberty. I personally really like Liberty. I mean, they are in Virginia. I think if you add a Virginia team, you just created an in-state rivalry right there. So if you're able to get Tech, you can get Liberty. Liberty's got 60,000 kids. Or actually, no, I think it's 100,000. They have some there. I think they're number one in enrollment. Um, and so I think Liberty's a sleeping giant, man. I truly do. With that
Yep.
many people who attend your university, you definitely have money. Um, and so I think Liberty is someone to invest in, honestly. So yeah,
Well, as a Big 12 fan, if I had to say four, I would say without a doubt, NC State, just phenomenal program. Like NC State is such a good program, so
they
underrated.
don't get any credit. Yeah,
They do not. They are like Oklahoma State and Utah, honestly. Like they need to be dropped consistently in that bucket. Like they are good. Number two would be Louisville, and then number
hmm
three would be Georgia or Virginia. Sorry, Virginia Tech.
yeah. Virginia
Virginia
Tech,
Tech,
100%.
Louisville. Honestly, Louisville should have been in the Big 12 back in 2011, back
But
when
Bowlesby fumbled that. Yeah,
Bowlesby fumbled it, but also Texas apparently had a lot to do with that, of course. But yeah, they fumbled that one. Louisville should be a Big 12 school. That was a fumbled opportunity to bring them into the league. I think Louisville is just a perfect fit for the Big
they
12 for so
are.
many
They're in the right
reasons.
area and like just, I mean, culture fit, like everything.
Yep,
Everything about Louisville is perfect for the Big 12.
exactly. And then NC State as well. Virginia Tech is such a buy low right now. Virginia Tech is such a buy low program right now, on and off the field. If the Big 12 could get them, that would be a great addition because Virginia Tech has a good ceiling. They have the
Passionate
passion.
fans,
Yeah, like
good
they
tradition.
Virginia Tech is such a buy low. Like if I had to play stock trading right now, Virginia Tech is a buy low
Oh
as a
yeah,
program.
absolutely. I agree.
And then that fourth one is what's bugging me a little bit because I'm on the fence between Pitt and Georgia Tech. And honestly, you made a good point. I'd say because Georgia Tech is in Atlanta, it's in the South. It's more of a, natural, better demographic and
It's more
population
strategic.
center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Pitt would
I
be amazing because it would bring that rivalry with West Virginia.
right. For I would say in terms of just pure on the field product over recent years, I'd probably say Pitt, but in terms of money, resources, and location, probably Georgia Tech.
And I
But
think that's what they would go with.
I
Because,
I would agree.
they want to try to shrink that gap between the top two leagues as much as they can. Granted, they're not going to come close, but they want to shrink it as much as they can.
Yeah. But I would say, I mean, what do we schools are missing here? We're leaving UVA out to dry. We're leaving Wake
Boston
Forest,
College is
Duke,
out.
Boston
Wakes.
College,
Yep.
Syracuse.
Now
Um,
I could see the Big 12 considering adding Duke because they value basketball very much. So if we ever have to where the Big 12 expands beyond the four, they may add teams like Duke because they want their basketball, and Virginia because they want their basketball. basketball. I can actually see Duke and Virginia being programs that the Big 12 wants very much for their basketball.
All right. Well, that'll conclude today's podcast. We talked a good a bit here, and I kind of enjoyed that ACC Big 12 discussion towards the end there, but lots to get to, man. I feel like even though it's the off season, it's February, but we still got a lot to talk about. So, man, college football is really that's why I love it, man. There's always something to talk
Always
about.
something.
There's always some creative ideas to speculate about and some interesting thought experiments to go around. So, yeah, more content for the channel, and those will be coming out over the next week or two. And for those Dynasty fans, I'm telling you, it's coming. Dynasty's coming back. So
Don't keep them waiting, man. Don't blue
I'm
ball
not,
them. Don't blue ball them.
I won't be blue balling them. I promise. I promise.
You're
It's just,
like you're like Arizona right now. You're making them like Arizona fans, not letting them fire their cannons, man.
hey, those videos require a lot of work. They take like 4 to 5 hours to make and then edit. It's a lot of work. I love doing it, don't get me wrong, but it's something it's not something I can just wake up and do the next day. It's something that's I gotta prep for it. I gotta get in that rhythm, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, but I am looking forward to it. And we gotta finish out season 5. But anyways, let's call it quits here, man. Good podcast tonight. Enjoyed it. And I'll try to see if I can put some aloe on because I just realizing like as we've recorded over the course of the night, my sunburns popped up a little bit from running today. Didn't put on sunblock, so my face is looking a little red. So I'll try to make sure that I get that addressed. But other than that, you got any closing remarks?
No, man. Good to see you again. Good to run another pod. I'm glad we still have some good off-season content to talk about. And yeah, man, I'm looking forward to, the channel slowly getting bigger and growing. We appreciate everyone for listening, for watching, and it's yeah, man. I mean, we couldn't appreciate everyone more. May only get like 20 views a video in this little stretch of time, but hey, some of y'all are loyal and true, and you're here, and we appreciate you guys so much.
100%. All right. That is in. I am Shub. Saturday Scholars. We are signing out. See y'all later and enjoy your college football off season and college basketball. We got March Madness around the corner. I'll also be putting out a video for that.
Well,
So that time of year.
we don't. Us Oklahoma State fans don't. But
Hey, Florida's looking like we can get in the tournament this year. Fingers crossed.
all right, all right.
All right. See y'all.